The man you're about to meet is a throwback to another era, a time when men without prospects rode the rails in search of work or adventure. It's a rough and risky lifestyle, not to mention it's against the law. And if you thought it ended with the Great Depression, you haven't met our next character, who's seeing the world from a boxcar.
There's something exhilarating about watching a train go by. Its speed, its power, and the mystery of not knowing where it's going. For most of us, the childlike fascination with locomotives lasts only for the mere moments it passes by.
I just remember waking up at night with the sound of trains going by and just being totally exhilarated by it.
This guy has never lost that childhood wonderment. At 34, Sean's passion for riding the rails is even stronger now than it was back then.
Gonna venture over and see how it goes.
So far, so good.
Inside a boxcar, as you can see. So let's hope that nobody saw us get in and that train moves soon.
Ever since I was a kid, from my earliest memories I can remember, I've always been fascinated with freight trains. And I guess it was just kind of a natural progression to eventually want to ride them one day. Like, I've always been obsessed with that culture, and so yeah, it was destiny, I guess.
When Sean was young, it was his dad who helped fuel his interest in trains.
Well, my dad, I guess, he knew I liked trains for a long time, and he'd sort of, you know, promote it. Like, we'd go camping. He'd talk about going train hopping, you know, doing the hobo thing out west, and he'd take me camping down at the local train yard. And he had told me one day we were actually going to go train hopping.
They never did go train hopping together, but 10 years later, Sean finally stole his first ride.
The one summer in New Brunswick, I finally got my chance. I remember it was 9 in the morning, and I just went down to the train yard to see if I could catch a train. I didn't know anything about it, didn't know much about any of it, and kind of just went down there and took a chance. When I was younger, you know, your heart would pound. You know, is the train going to come? Am I going to get caught? But I think for the most part these days, it's become more relaxing for me. So I think for me, when I cross over into that realm, like, I feel free because I'm kind of going beyond what most people would have the courage to do.
His courage could land him in prison. You see, train hopping is illegal. Sean could be fined hundreds of dollars or face jail time if he's caught. But that hasn't stopped him yet. Sean has hopped in some of the wildest places.
When I was in Thailand, I didn't know what the laws were on train hopping. I didn't know maybe I'd go to jail for 20 years if I got caught. I mean, for drugs there, they'll put you in jail for life. Maybe it's the same for train hopping.
I have a feeling that before this train leaves, someone's gonna come and kick me out.
And if you get on somewhere that's not safe, or where you're open to the public viewing, you're either going to get busted or you're going to get killed. So as soon as it rolls in, you're scanning the train, you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to ride?
I don't want to peek too far out there because the tower's on that side, so forgive me for the shit you. Gotta play it safe for now.
And then once it slows down enough, then you get on and get down and hope that nobody saw you, and then you take off.
In 2011, Sean took his hopping skills to India. Staying under the radar is especially hard in a place like this.
In India, there's people everywhere at all times of the day. And on top of it, in India, people don't just hang out and watch trains, really. So a foreigner being by the train tracks, everybody would constantly come up to us and ask us what we're doing.
When Sean did manage to jump a train, it started one of the best adventures he'd ever had.
the train started leaving, so we booked it, ran, caught the train, and actually made it out. Speeding train with no wind block, like it was cold. And when the sun came up, it was absolutely breathtaking. There was like a pink, the desert was kind of pink, and just seeing the desert and seeing nomadic tribes kind of walking there. And then as we got closer into a town, I guess we were getting a little cocky because we were used to just being in a different kind of environment that we weren't getting down when we were going through towns. And some guy had actually seen us on the train.
Suddenly, out of nowhere, the train stopped.
And we heard footsteps, and then this little head, Indian head looks up and he's kind of like, what the hell are these foreigners doing on the train? And so they take us off, and they're like, you guys realize this isn't a passenger train?
Sean thought for sure trouble was coming.
There's our ride.
But instead of being detained, the rail workers handed him the most unlikely of punishments.
They felt sorry for us, that they got us tea and cookies, which is really bizarre, and then they were going to let us ride in the locomotive, like up front. The whole ordeal was awesome. I mean, I got trains, I got adventure, it was bizarre. I mean, that's really what I went there for, so I was pretty happy in the end.
Sean has had a few other close calls over the years. For him, it's all worth it for the rush that comes with almost getting busted.
I think the challenge for me is also a big part of it, and I enjoy the hardships. Like I guess I'm a bit masochistic in that way. I've always found it a romantic notion it's sort of like the old man in the sea, like it's you, the train, and the weather, and you're out there and it's cold and you're clinging to life. Like, there's always been this romantic notion with being sort of on the brink of death, but finding that little bit of comfort.
Sean's closest brush with death came last year, back home in Canada.
And so I had left to head up north without a sleeping bag, and it was the coldest winter for me train hopping yet.
Look at that sad state of a boot. Look at that. I may not be a hobo, but I'm starting to definitely look like one. Jesus Christ.
The cold from the snow would sink through my jacket, and I couldn't actually fall asleep. So I spent 3 sleepless nights not being able to sleep, and I was freezing cold to the point that I was starting to hallucinate while standing up. Last night, trains were pulling in, stopping right beside me, empty unit just sitting there, idling, calling to me, just begging for me to ride. It's kind of like if you had a girlfriend and then some girl's like, hey, you can do whatever you want, Timmy. Maybe I won't use that analogy. It sounded better when I was drunk. I guess it was stupid. Like, I knew that I needed things to be warm, and I still took the risk of trying to, cheat my experience and see if I could go without it, and it almost cost me my life. You're never too old to learn a lesson, I think, is what this winter taught me.
It's an intimate kinship between man and machine, one that lasts even after you're back home.
Because you're kind of with this beast, and you're putting up with all the elements, after 6 or 7 hours of going through something like that, even when you watch the train go away, you kind of feel like you were attached to it.
Train, won't you take me on? Train, won't you take me on? I wanna see the land where they don't know who I am, and they don't care how I spend my days.
Before we leave you tonight, we'd like to give you a small taste of some of the stories you'll be seeing later this season on 16 by 9. Here's a look.
They were abducting him. I believe that my son Diego was taken by the Vallarta police.
I lost count at 3,000. I've cut myself over 3,000 times in my lifetime.
I had 16 wounded, 1 man dead. The wounded were still firing. And no one even suggested the idea of quitting.
And that is our broadcast for tonight. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. From all of us here at 16 by 9, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.